Hello. I thought we might be a little tiny circle because whenever somebody is opposite Gary Francione, that's sometimes what happens. So thank you so much for choosing to be here and spending this hour with me. I'm Victoria Moran. Do I know any of you? And that can include online. Oh, okay. Well, of course we did. We met last night, yes. And because they were serving virgin mojitos, we all remember that. Anybody else I should say a special hello to? Someone came up to me whom I know just by Facebook name, and she handed me this little package and said, "This is for Forbes. He's my dog." So that was very sweet. So I don't want to miss anybody that I should be giving a shout out to. Okay, let me tell you what's going around, then I'll tell you about me, and then we'll talk about attraction activism, which is a very exciting concept to me, because I came up with it recently, and I think it's really the future of our movement, because it means that absolutely everybody can get involved, even for people for whom the word activism is a little bit frightening. So, sign-up sheet is going around. I have a little weekly newsletter. It's very tiny. I call it the Main Street Minute to remind me to keep it down to a minute. So feel free to give me your very legible email address and first name if you'd like to be part of that. And then also the bookmarks are about the Main Street Vegan Academy, Main Street Vegan podcast that you listen to, and it's so much fun. It's every week, and there are 4 years of archives now, and we've had on some of the biggest names in the vegan movement, but also some people who aren't well known, but who are just incredibly fascinating. And that's really what this is about, everybody getting their message out there into the world. And finally, this is something that is not being passed out, but if you're interested, this is about Main Street Vegan Academy, which is a training program that I do in New York City, so it is kind of across the pond. It's 6 days of miracles and adventure, and at the end, you're certified as a vegan lifestyle coach and educator. We've had 3 UK graduates and people from all over the world, Australia, Germany. We just had somebody from Saudi Arabia. She's 18 years old and wants to go back and start PETA Saudi. So that's pretty cool. So pick one of those up if you're interested. Finally, I feel like I'm doing the commercial break before there's anything to break from. I have learned from my colleagues that to wait and do a book signing over there, I lose you all to food booths. So I did bring the books, Main Street Vegan. It's kind of a young classic at this point. People love it. Everything you need to know about veganism. Holidays are coming, good to have. And this is the new one, the Good Karma Diet, which kind of ups the ante on helping you be vibrant and healthy and beautiful, but always remembering that the good karma really comes from what we do for others, what we do for the animals and for those who can't speak for themselves. So I'll be signing in here. If you want both books or 2 copies of either, you get £5 off. Whew. My mother was a really good salesman, and you know how sometimes things skip a generation? It's like, I just don't sell things, but I know that it's necessary. And you know what? That can also be part of the activism. You know, so many people say, oh, we'll never save animals until we get rid of capitalism. Well, I don't recall that in China or in the former Soviet Union, it was a great bastion of animal rights. So I think that those of us who do have an entrepreneurial spirit and want to go into some kind of a vegan business can do really well in that way too. I'm going to send these around again because I see some people came in after they were passed out. Podcast bookmarks. Okay, I'm Victoria Moran. And I write books, and I've been vegan since 1983. I became vegetarian, oh my gosh, 1969. And I was actually living here in London. I came here right out of high school. In fact, on my 18th birthday, the day that I was legal, I was on the plane to get here because I knew this was my magical place. And among many other magical things that happened while I was here, Paul McCartney bought me a Scotch and Coke. That's magical. In addition to that, I became vegan before Paul McCartney became, well, vegetarian. I became vegetarian before Paul McCartney. Vegan took longer because I was a practicing compulsive overeater. I was a binge eater. It was how I handled my feelings. It was how I got through life. So it was difficult to be vegan because there's all kinds of non-vegan stuff in most of the junk food. Now I realize that nowadays there's this whole array of vegan junk food, but you usually have to go to a natural food store or somewhere to get it. Could somebody close that door, please? Thank you. And at that time, it was just too difficult for me. Plus, I didn't really understand the ramifications. I'm sorry, I gave this lovely young woman a terribly difficult job. Oh, you see, this is how it is. Now she got help from a total stranger. It's all good. It's all activism. So, yeah, I heard about veganism when I was living here, and there was a tiny little line about it in a Vegetarian Society publication, and it said, people called vegans don't consume eggs or dairy products because they don't want to interfere with animals' sexual functioning. And I remember thinking, I'm 18 years old, I don't understand my own sexual functioning, I can't worry right now about cows and chickens. It was only later, after I got back to the States, and I started reading more and learned that really, if we're vegetarian in our hearts, we need to be vegan in our actions. And it's a process. It takes some people no time at all. It takes some people long time. Took me a long time. I had to do the inner work to change my relationship with food before I was able to become vegan. But once I did it, perhaps second only to having my daughter, it's the best thing that's ever happened in my life, both for my soul and I believe for my health. I'm 65 years old, I don't feel it, and I don't have any of the diseases that people in my family had before they reached this age. It's a pretty cool way to live. I also raised my daughter vegan, and she works as a stunt performer. So no wimpy vegans around here. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of life. So what I want to share with you today is something that came to me fairly recently, because people would sometimes introduce me at an event and they would say author and speaker, and she runs Main Street Vegan Academy, and she's an animal rights activist. And I would always feel a little bit uncomfortable because I feel that I used to be an animal rights activist, and now I'm something else. I'm very much an animal rights proponent, but I'm not sure that the term activist really fits. Does anybody relate to that? Does anybody else feel like you're helping animals, but the activist term doesn't quite describe you? Okay, good. Thank you, thank you. It's like when I say at a health talk, who's vegan and who's vegetarian and who's a healthy omnivore, and I get, lots of hands, and then I say, who just eats any kind of junk they can get their hands on, and there's always one guy in the back, and I usually give him a free book. So it's, for me, when I was younger, I was out with signs all the time. And when I look through old photo albums of paper pictures, back when we had paper pictures, there's my daughter in her stroller with her little sign. And we have all these great stories. There was one time that they were going to pass a ruling in Wisconsin, where we were living in the Midwestern United States, which is a very big dairy state. And this ruling was that every dairy farmer had to brand the calves in the face. Why would the government care? Now, this was a very interesting work because at that particular time, the dairy farmers, whom we were always fighting, actually joined with the animal rights activists to be on our side for this particular issue. And I was all getting in a hurry to go. My daughter was going to stay with her dad. She was about 3. And she was like, I need to go, I need to go. I said, all right, I'll take you. I need a sign, I need a sign. What do you want your sign to say? Don't kill the cows. I said, look, they're going to kill the cows anyway. Your sign needs to say, don't hurt the cows. And she looked at me like I was dim-witted, and she said, killing hurts. So she got her little sign, we went in the stroller, and hoped for the best. A couple of nights later, on the news, they'd had the trial, the hearing about this particular issue, and it seems that a young dairy farmer didn't testify with words. He sang a song, Attraction-Activism, using the gifts that you have. He sang a song that started out by saying, I heard of a girl the age of 3 who carried a sign that said, let the calves be. Don't hurt the cows, just let them be. And for that one little campaign, it happened that we won. So when I think of memories like that, I think, yeah, I was a total activist. But life intervened. I was widowed in my 30s. I was a single mom, didn't have a whole lot of money. All that mom stuff got very involved. Work became very busy. Stayed vegan, stayed involved. A lot less of the carrying signs and the things that I would say are what most people think of as activism. And yet, I kept making vegans. And people kept being in touch and saying, I read this thing that you wrote. I ran into a friend of a friend. I worked with you 20 years ago, and I remember you ate that weird food, and I thought you were weird too. But then my cholesterol went up and my blood sugar went up, and I remembered you. I remembered what you ate, and now I'm a vegan. Guess I'm crazy too. So these little things came into my awareness, and I thought, you know what? This is a very powerful way to be vegan in the world as well. And certainly if you're also out with the signs, more and better. I think it can actually increase your outreach exponentially. So what Attractivism is, in a nutshell, is simply the way you live your life can draw more people to want to live a similar kind of life. Now, I didn't make this up. I actually got it from Alcoholics Anonymous. Anybody who likes to drink, or anybody who used to like to drink in your earlier life, can never tell me that you were in the pub having a good time and a couple of guys from Alcoholics Anonymous walked in, passing out literature and saying you should all stop drinking. They don't do that. They live their lives. They recover from alcoholism, they do well in the world, and then when somebody has a drinking problem and wants their help, they have attracted that person by how they live to come and be part of that program. And when I heard about that, I thought, well, you know what? We can do that as vegans. We do that as vegans. So let's do it consciously. Thus, Attraction-Activism. You can see it with the celebrities, and I know right now, and thank you so much for being here when you could be at some kind of a thing about Beyonce. But if you're Beyonce, all you have to do is kind of sort of maybe be vegan. I mean, nobody really knows if she and Jay-Z are vegan. We know they did 21 days in December, and we know that they are part of a vegan food program, the 21-day nutrition thing. I had their other partner, their physical trainer, on my podcast. And so maybe they're vegan, maybe they're not vegan, but most people think they are, and therefore, some people want to do it. So for those of us who really are vegan, we might not have the reach of Beyonce, but we all have reach. And that is so important to remember, because what we're talking about here is carrying the message to those people that you reach. And it's a ripple effect. This is the coolest thing. Who's heard of Bruce Friedrich? Does anybody know Bruce Friedrich in the animal movement? He's a remarkable human being. He was actually voted by Esquire magazine one of the most influential young men under 35. Well, now he's over 35. But he started out in human rights work, and he was with PETA for many years, Farm Sanctuary for many years. He's written a couple of books, and he is able to write editorials that get published in great big newspapers in the States. I mean, the LA Times and the New York Times, just the Chicago Tribune. He's all over everywhere. Well, oh, golly, it was a long time ago. It was back in the 80s when people used the phone. And I got a call, and this voice said, My name is Bruce Friedrich, and I am a student at Grinnell College, and I read an article that you wrote in the Animals Agenda, which was a tiny little animal rights magazine, only read by people in the movement and people who hung out in college libraries. And he said, I read your article, and I want you to know now I'm vegan. And I thought, okay, that's good. And then he said, we're coming through Kansas City, do you want to have dinner? And I'm thinking, I'm a single mom with no money. I will let anybody take me to dinner, assuming that if he was an axe murderer, he probably wouldn't have gone vegan. So met, became friends, he's vegan. He has influenced hundreds of thousands of people. When Rory Friedman of Skinny Bitch heard that I had made Bruce Friedrich vegan, she said, you never have to do another good deed in your whole life. So you don't know whom you're going to reach by living your life and speaking up. Now, sometimes we have to speak up when maybe we don't really want to. And we also have to use what we've got. So what have you got that people want? Well, first off, what do people want in the world? On the first level, we'll think, well, gosh, people want more money and more sex, and they want to be more attractive, and they want to be more respected, and they want to have more love and more friends and more time. Okay, and then let's go a little bit deeper. What do people want? They want to feel good about themselves. So when I think about what people want, I think about overcoming. When I first started speaking professionally, it was before the internet, and so speakers bureaus sent out information about their speakers in a paper catalog. And I was so excited that I got signed by this speakers bureau. I thought I had really hit the big time. And I'm sitting across the breakfast table reading about all these incredible speakers. And my daughter, who was maybe 14, was across the table from me. And I'm saying, oh, look at this woman. She lost her whole family in a house fire that left her blind, and now she's a motivational speaker. Turning the page, turning the page. Oh my gosh, this guy was in a big blow-up explosion in Vietnam, and he lost both arms and legs, and he speaks and he inspires people. And I'm going on and on with these awful stories. And finally, my daughter, in that wonderful cynicism of early adolescence, says, doesn't anybody speak who had a good life? Well, maybe not. My life was always perfect. I was valedictorian and I was prom queen. I married my high school sweetheart. We had 2 boys and 2 girls. We've lived happily ever after. Then we won the lottery. Well, you know, it's a nice story. But probably people want a little bit more transformation. What have you transformed in your life? What have you overcome in your life? What have you seen? And this includes what have you seen with animals? There's a whole chapter in the Good Karma Diet that's called Animal Stories. And I'm not talking here about the awful, dreadful ones, because probably most of us who have gone to slaughterhouses and factory farms, we have plenty of those. But I'm talking about the sweet stories, the wonderful story about you and a dog, or a cat, or a horse, or a cow, or a chicken, or even a fish. Wonderful book coming next spring from Jonathan Balcombe about the sentience and the intelligence of our fellow creatures who happen to live in the water. So what stories do you have? We're a storytelling species. We live on stories. It's what we remember. I'll talk to somebody who heard me speak like 10 years prior. They won't remember anything I said that had any facts, but they'll say, I remember that story you told about whatever it was. We are wired, we are evolutionarily wired for stories. And as you live these stories and share these stories, that is all part of your activism. So I want to give you something to remember today, and that is an acronym. I'm very big on acronyms because it helps people remember. And this acronym is for Ahimsa, which is non-harming. Jay Dinshaw, founder of the American Vegan Society, we were a little bit later than you, that was founded in 1960, but that was really how I made the transition into vegan. He didn't give up on me, by the way. Do you have any friends or relatives that you're just like, Why won't my brother-in-law go vegan? Why won't he go vegan? Don't give up. Just be nice. Just be there. Shine your light. Allow. Don't give up on him. And Jay and Freya Dinshaw of the American Vegan Society never gave up on me, and I finally made it. But anyway, Jay used to define Ahimsa as dynamic harmlessness. For example, if you are injured on the street and I walk by, you can't say I injured you. I didn't hurt you. There you are. I didn't do a thing to you. But was that really Ahimsa? Because I didn't stop to help. So dynamic harmlessness means certainly in our lives, we're saving animals just by our food choices, our consumer choices, but we also want to have dynamic harmlessness. We also want to really help. So I'm going to give you a little point for each letter in that word Ahimsa that will help you to remember. The first is something that I think we need to shout from the housetops for new vegans, and that is A in the word Ahimsa, add more to your life than you subtract. Because when we get somebody who's interested maybe in coming over this way, and they say, I don't get it, what's this vegan thing? Do you know what we give them? We give them a negative response. A vegan doesn't eat. Isn't that what we always say? You go to the dictionary. What does it say? Veganism is not consume. What is not doing something? So we say to the person, well, a vegan doesn't eat meat, fowl, fish, eggs, including in baked goods, dairy products, and that includes milk, butter, cream, whipped cream, clotted cream, cheese, including in pizza, honey, or wear, wool, fur, leather, silk, down, or cosmetics that have been tested on animals, household products that have been tested on animals, and you don't take your kids to the circus, to the zoo, to SeaWorld. I mean, you lost him back at clotted cream. So instead of this whole negative thing, when somebody asks what it is in your life to be vegan, you say, oh my gosh, it's just the coolest thing. I had no idea when I started to do this because I care about animals or I care about my arteries or whatever it is that made you make the change. No idea that worlds were going to open up for me. I have to tell you that not only do I feel better than I have ever felt in my life, I feel that I have an understanding of animals and people and life that I couldn't have possibly gotten if I was living in any other way. It's kind of like Pythagoras said. Do you know that Pythagoras was actually the father of veganism? Amazing, the guy with the theorem. He wouldn't let anybody come to study with him in mathematics or philosophy unless they agreed to a 40-day fast, water only, not carrot, celery, and beet juice, and then they had to live on what he called an unfired diet, what we would today call a raw vegan diet. And we have Karen Ramsey in the back, great expert on raw vegan living. Karen Ramsey and Pythagoras. So what we want to do is tell people, this is just the coolest thing ever. And then they say, well, isn't the food kind of boring? Oh, are you kidding? The food that I eat now as a vegan is so much more interesting. I used to just kind of eat steaks and chops and burgers. I thought that was okay because that was all I ate. And then all of a sudden, I discovered this world of ethnic cuisine. Have you eaten at an Ethiopian restaurant? In Ethiopia, they practice a kind of Christianity that takes Lent very seriously. So 6 weeks of every year, the whole country is practically vegetarian. So they've evolved this cuisine that has all sorts of lentils and greens and vegetables prepared with unbelievable spices in such lovely ways. And they believe that forks are weapons, so you get to eat with this delicious, stretchy sourdough bread. It's so cool. And then all the fruits and vegetables. I go to the farmer's market. I didn't know so many vegetables came in purple. It's excitement. Add more to your life than you subtract. And not just food. You want to explore all the products, and something like this festival is a wonderful place to start, and then go online and figure out about the clothes and the cosmetics. If you're into fashion, be more fashionable than you ever were, because it's all part of activism. I learned this lesson a couple of years ago. Whenever somebody comes to visit New York City, I tend to take them on the vegan tour. It's also part of the Main Street Vegan Academy program. New York is kind of Disneyland for vegans. I must say, I feel so lucky to live there. They're not only amazing restaurants, but we've got a vegan coat shop and a vegan menswear store and a vegan shoe store and 2 vegan cosmetics emporia, all sorts of amazing things. So I had taken this woman to Moo Shoes, our vegan shoe shop, and hanging on the wall were the most incredible pair of boots. They were black ultra suede with wedge heels, and they were over-the-knee boots. But if you peeled back the cuff, periwinkle blue. But they were way expensive, more than I would ordinarily spend on my lower extremities. So, being a reasonable person, I let them go, took my friend back to a hotel, got on the bus to go home, and I heard the voice of God. And God said, "Victoria," and I said, "Yes," and God said, "You are almost too old for over-the-knee black ultra suede boots with periwinkle cuffs. Almost. Not quite. Act before it is too late." So certainly not to disregard the man upstairs, I went back to Moo Shoes the next day and bought those boots. Well, this is how I know it was really the voice of God. Every time I wear those boots, I get compliments. I could be blindfolded and know exactly what part of New York City I'm in based on the compliments I get on my boots. So if I'm on the Upper East Side, which is all kind of hoity-toity and kind of Belgravia, people will say, "Fabulous boots." And I say, "Thank you," and they're vegan. And if I am down in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is kind of our Camden town, people will say, "Cool boots." And I say, "Thank you," and they're vegan. And if we're in Harlem, which happens to be not my neighborhood, I'm more likely to get, "Whoa, mama." And I say, "Thank you," and they're vegan. So it's activism. This is attraction activism just by wearing something on my feet. So don't hold it back. Don't keep it to yourself. Let other people know what you've added to your life. H in the word Ahimsa. That is harm no one, including yourself. This is where the health part of veganism comes in. It's kind of tricky sometimes. I think more in the States than over here. We have all these people who are only about the health. And lots of times they don't even like the word vegan, and they want to call themselves plant-based. Do you get much of that over here? I'm seeing some yeses and some nos. That probably means it's on its way, watch for it. I personally don't like plant-based because it leaves a hole. So if I tell you, yeah, my neighbor's kids go to this math-based school, you're not thinking, oh, those poor children, they're not getting any history or English or art. Well, you know they're getting that stuff too. It's just there's an emphasis on math. And if one of my paleo acquaintances says, oh, I'm on a plant-based diet, 60% plants, 40% meat. Well, that's accurate, but I don't like it. So, and yet, on the other hand, the health is really important. When I became vegan back in 1983, and when I started observing vegans in the early 70s, everybody got healthier when they went vegan because there were no processed foods. And I I don't know where to put the processed foods in my psyche. On the one hand, I love it that we have all these amazing foods. Love it, love it, love it. Because when somebody says, I could never go vegan because of cheese, I could never go vegan because of ice cream, I could never go vegan because of marshmallows, we get to say, and you don't have to. And you can see downstairs, we've got all this stuff. That's good. But what that means is we have to be as discerning as all the omnivores. It used to be all you had to do was go vegan, and immediately, your cholesterol went down, your blood pressure went down, your waist came out of hiding, and everything was really good. Not quite so easy anymore, but still it is important if we're looking at harm no one, not even yourself, and this is knowingly. We harm people all the time, especially like spouses, but we're all human, but we are aspiring to harm no one, not even ourselves. And when you don't harm yourself, that means that you're in better health and you have more vitality and more ability to get out there and work for the animals. There is nothing sadder than an animal activist who is so dedicated that they stay up all night and they're drinking coffee all night and they're dragging themselves through the day because they're trying to save the animals. But then they get sick because they haven't tried to save themselves. So it's kind of like in the airplane, put the mask on yourself first and then help the other person. That's what we need to do. We need to take good care of ourselves so that we have all this vitality to get out there in the world and help the animals. I, in the word Ahimsa, is immerse yourself in these ideas, at least when you're new, and until you get to know what's up. And even after you've been around it a long time, you still need to stay up to date. Because if we're all talking about stuff that we thought was true like 40 years ago, we're not going to reach people. I mean, I was a vegetarian and vegan for a little while when people believed that you had to combine your proteins. Does anybody remember that? That you had to mix grains and beans together so that the amino acid content of that meal looked the same as meat. Well, the woman who wrote that book, Diet for a New America, Frances Moore Lapay, she has since said, sorry guys, I was wrong. You don't have to do that. The body maintains a blood pool of amino acids. You can draw on that as long as you're eating a variety of foods over a week's time. You're absolutely fine. So if I were to get up here, because the last book I ever read was 1975, and said, yes, it's very safe to be vegan as long as you mix your grains and your beans, well, that's not good, because that would have meant I hadn't kept up. So immerse yourself in the beginning, and then keep up afterwards. But you don't want to just be a vegan. You want to have another life too, because remember, we're trying to attract others. So when you immerse yourself in these ideas, you'll be able to answer the questions. And sometimes people ask the same questions over and over again. And it's not part of Ahimsa that when somebody says, where do you get your protein? You roll your eyes and say, couldn't you think of a more original question than that? Well, no, because that's the question we all had. And so every question somebody asks, golly, that is an interesting question. I was just thinking about that myself the other day, and it occurred to me that that's such an important question, and protein is so important that nature put it in everything. It's in everything that grows up out of the ground. And you can't really be deficient as long as you're getting enough calories from whole plant foods. Cool, isn't it? Thanks for asking that. So once you're immersed, you've got the information. And if you don't have an answer to something, it's perfectly fine to say, I don't know, but I can find it out. And Mr. Google knows practically everything, and so you really can find it out and get back to the person. Because when they think that you care, then they think vegans care. And generally speaking, we do. We really do. We're a good bunch. M. M stands for, I'm losing the word that I wanted. This is so embarrassing. Let's just say it this way. Make your life immortal. What's a word that starts with M that means make your life immortal? What I'm trying to, Memorable, yes, I want a verb. Yes? Manifest, that wasn't what I was thinking, but that's good. I think I was going to say memorialize. That is what I was going to say. Thank you all for all your help. Memorialize your life. Now, it used to be that in order to memorialize your life, you had to be someone very gifted in, let's say, painting. I don't think anybody would argue that Gauguin or Frida Kahlo memorialized their lives in their paintings. Or you could be a writer. You could write your autobiography and memorialize your life that way. Or you could write all kinds of narrative essays for magazines, and people would stack them up and save them for years. Well, nowadays, you don't have to be all that gifted. All you have to have is a computer. And what you want to do is memorialize your vegan life every day you live it. So who's on social media? Who's on more than one? Who's on more than two? Who's on more than three? Okay. If anybody's on more than 4, you have to be under 12. Okay. Well, everybody in the world, practically except my husband, is on Facebook. So how much do you use Facebook for your vegan stuff? Now, we're not talking in your face Facebook so that all of your friends from school and your relatives are like, can't I block her? I'm so sick of this stuff. But with attraction-activism, it's not that you're posting every animal that needs a home, every animal abuse, because that does get hard for people to see every day, and they really will block you and even unfriend. But what you want to do is post these fabulous, amazing things that you do. Look what I made for dinner. Look at this cool stall at the VegFest. I took a picture of the caviar stall. We don't have vegan caviar in the US. We have something called foie gras, foie gras, that's the French awful one. We have faux gras, and so that's cool, but no caviar, so I took a picture, and that's gonna go on Facebook. So just little things. And then you also want to post stuff that doesn't have to do with veganism. So your friends won't think you've joined some kind of cult where if you don't have the V word in every sentence, they're going to kick you out or make you stand in a corner and say affirmations. It's not like that. I happen to love Twitter. Who's on Twitter? Okay. If you're not, please do it. Just come on over. It's so easy and it's so much fun. There have been government overthrows because of Twitter. The power of that 140 characters is really, really something. And it's so good for this kind of thing. Because in 140 characters, you can do a beautiful quotation. I know this lovely woman up front is of the Jain faith. My favorite quotation in all the world comes from Mahavira, the great saint of Jainism, who said, "To every creature, his own life is very dear." You could put that on Twitter. And did it just kind of give you chills? Well, you can give chills to everybody who follows you on Twitter, and then they can forward it to all their people. Ripple, ripple, ripple. How about Instagram? Who's on Instagram? Instagram is, that's what it just says. It's instant. It's so fabulous. You take your picture, and then it can go to Facebook and Twitter instantly, no work. And that way you kind of get triple the power. And lots of vegans take pictures of their food, and this is wonderful. Just remember to take pictures of other things too, because one of the things that we have to fight is that this is a diet. This is not a diet. This is a revolution. And so often I'll meet somebody and say, yeah, I'm vegan. And they'll say, you gotta meet my sister-in-law. She's gluten-free. So it's like, okay, you don't eat some things, she doesn't eat some things, you guys must be soulmates. It's not a diet. And so we've got to post stuff other than just food all the time. Who is doing Periscope? Any Periscopers here? Periscope is new, and I haven't learned it yet, but that's on my calendar for when I get back home. It's a way to do these little videos that will disappear after 24 hours. And it is a way to get everybody who follows you on all your platforms to really see your life in action. We love video because we grew up on television. All these wonderful documentaries that we have that are pushing the movement forward, this whole movement, and I'm talking animal rights back when it was called animal welfare, back when veganism, even when people were vegan, was still called vegetarianism, back when it was Pythagoreanism, before the word vegetarian was coined in 1840, it was a history of books. And now we're seeing it become a history of film. And you can be part of that when you get on Periscope and you're putting your little things out there. So if you were on Periscope and you liked what I had to say, for example, or any of these speakers, you could just say, hey, can we talk for just like a minute? And there's nobody here that's a speaker who would say, well, no. Partly because we all really care about the issues, and partly because you don't do this if you don't have some kind of ego. And then we'd say, sure, of course. And we chat, and you put it on your Periscope, and then all your friends who couldn't be here get to talk with Gary Francione or whoever it is that you find cool who's here. This is powerful stuff. So memorialize your life on social media and just keep it out there, keep it going, and have a great life that you want to memorialize. S, that is to socialize and support your fellow vegans, because we are a minority, and it's kind of tough. I mean, here we are in London, where the Vegan Society was founded 71 years ago, and today I got off the Underground and thought I'll just run into that pret-a-manger place and pick up a little soup and a little sandwich. Well, interestingly enough, both of the soups had dairy, and even the sandwiches that said very vegan words like tahini all had some kind of mayonnaise or something, so it wasn't vegan. It's a little bit inconvenient still. If it's ever inconvenient in London or New York City, think about how inconvenient it is for a lot of people in a lot of places. So we need to support one another. So you need to get together with vegans. Who in your life has some vegan friends in real life that you can hang out with? Okay, it's tough if you don't. It really, really is. So maybe make some here, and certainly online. And that is one of the best things about Facebook and all the rest. I know there are things about them that are not so great, like they can take all your time, but it is wonderful to know that you're not the only person doing this. So socialize with other vegans, and then support other vegans. And that doesn't necessarily mean with money. Sometimes now in the era of crowdfunding, it can seem like everybody you know needs money for something, and sometimes you just have to say, I love you, but I can't this time. But you want to be there for moral support. You know, there are people in very difficult situations. There are people in these mixed marriages where they're vegan or vegetarian and their partner isn't. Sometimes they're vegan or vegetarian and their partner is anti-vegan or vegetarian. I mean, I know some people in the States who are married to hunters. I mean, think how difficult that's got to be. You're vegan, and your partner's eating vegan when you cook it, but then they go off and assassinate some animal and bring the body parts and put it in the freezer in your garage. That is tough stuff. So you need to be there with that kind of support. And what I say to somebody like that is, you are a bigger man than I am. I don't think I could do it, but you can do it. And one day, when your light shines so brightly that you bring that hunter over, woohoo! There is going to be a major hoopla in animal heaven because you did something amazing. So let's support one another. And finally, A is what we've been talking about for this whole almost hour, and that is to attract others by living your aspirational life. So what does that mean, aspirational life? You want to be as healthy as you can be. There's no guarantee. This is Earth. You know, this is not a place of immortality and perfect health all the time. But you want to be pretty healthy because people are going to think if you're not, it's your veganism. Is that fair? Of course it's not fair. It's entirely unfair. What if instead of animal rights being your cause in this world, what if your cause was literacy? would anybody, if you were sick all the time, and if you were pale, and if you were kind of wan, and if you were tired a lot, would ever say, well, I think she's sickly because of all that reading? They wouldn't do that. But if you're vegan, protein deficiency, they've already figured that one out. So you want to be as healthy as you can possibly be. And if you're not, and somebody says something like, oh, well, I notice you've got a cold, it's probably that you need to be eating bacon, then you just have to say, you mean nobody who eats meat has ever gotten a cold? That is remarkable. All those cold remedies in the boots, they're just there for vegans. You wouldn't think they could sell that much of it. So sometimes you just have to bring a little bit of reality into the reality. You also want to have a nice balanced life, which I know sounds kind of like an after-school special. Do you have those over here? We have them in the States. They're kind of movies that kids are supposed to watch to make them better citizens. But you do want to have a life. So when you're doing all your posting and all you're talking about how cool it is to be vegan, and I just cooked this, and I just ate this, and I just bought these shoes, you also want to say, well, here I am with my sister. You don't have to say my sister who isn't vegan, but the implication is there. You know what? I can still talk with other people. I'm not going to go drink the Kool-Aid next week. So you want to show the kind of life that you would want if you weren't vegan already, because we have something to offer the world that nobody else has. We have a way to save the planet, if anybody saw Cowspiracy yesterday, and that is a wonderful thing. Who's a big environmental type person? Okay, hooray, God bless you. It's not where I resonate. I mean, I live in a green building, and I don't know what that means. I just know our floors are bamboo, and you better not get any water on them, and we get our heat from somewhere under the ground. But I don't relate to, we're going to save the planet, because I look outside and the planet looks fine. So for me, it's about saving the animals. And guess what? That means I'm going to save the planet in spite of myself. For those of you it's about saving the planet, well, thank you from all of us. And you're also going to be saving the animals. And then there's this huge health crisis around the world. I mean, countries are going to start being bankrupted just trying to pay the medical bills of the people who live there. As the population ages in the Western world, it is getting out of sight how serious it is and how everybody's sick. In the States, they now let them advertise pharmaceuticals on television. It's really frightening. Has anybody been over there and noticed the pharmaceutical ads? They'll show all these people looking so happy, 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 and then they'll say, and do not take if you are male or female, and do not take if you have ever breathed any air. And it's actually possible that you could grow an extra thumb. You could develop a gambling addiction. That was actually one. It was a medication for restless leg syndrome, and it could give you a gambling addiction. Or you could die 1,000 deaths, which proves reincarnation. Or you could come to despise all of your friends and family, and you could actually think that you're a Cocker Spaniel. Ask your doctor if this drug is right for you. We are a drugged culture because of the way we eat, because of the way we live. Now, in terms of karma, what are we supposed to get when we're killing animals by the billions? I think we've got it. We've got the kind of environment and the kind of health status that comes from that. But what you and I and all of us here have is a way out that is absolutely stunning and amazing and perfect and beautiful. We're going to add more to our lives than we subtract. We're going to attempt to harm no one, including ourselves. We're going to immerse ourselves in these ideas until we know how to do this safely, delightfully, and can answer anybody's questions. Then we're going to memorialize our lives and share that with other people. We are going to support and socialize with other vegans, and through all of this, we are going to attract the people around us, and some more people, and some more people, and some more people until, guess what? The world is vegan, the animals are free, and like they said in the old fairy tales, we finally can live happily ever after. Thank you.